as well. I'll go ahead and turn on the recording and we'll get started here. So first thing, we have a short link for this slideshow. To get to it, it's bit.ly/lowercase webinar 415. That will get you the slideshow for today, bit.ly/webinar 415. I'll also put that into the chat real quick for everybody. bit.ly/webinar 415. And there you are. And we'll go ahead and get rolling here. Again, if this is your first time in Zoom, here's a couple of little tips for you. If you're stuck in full screen, press the escape key on your keyboard. That'll get you out. If you need to unmute yourself, the bottom left corner is the unmute button. Go ahead and click on that and that'll get you unmuted. Same thing with your stopping or starting your webcam. If you minimize the Zoom window, it shows up as this little tiny window there. And if you need to get back to full screen, hover over it and click on that little green arrow. If you need to raise your hand, you can go under the participants menu at the bottom and then do raise hand. For our purposes today, you really don't have to do that. You can just unmute yourself and go ahead and speak out or type into the chat. I'll keep an eye on the chat as well. All right, and here's our to-do list for today. I always like to organize things this way. I was a high school social studies teacher, and this is how I like to organize lessons for the day. I would do a to-do list, and at the end of the day, we'd check off all of the items on our to-do list. So here's ours. We'll look at Chromebook accessibility tools. We'll talk about how to do some differentiation in Google Classroom. We'll also talk about maximizing Google Docs and slides for differentiation. We'll also take a quick peek at Immersive Reader in OneNote Online and a couple other tools that use Immersive Reader. And then if we have time, we'll go real quick into Noisely. So differentiation, of course, I'm sure we all have heard a definition like this at some point or another. Differentiation means tailoring instruction to meet individual needs, whether teachers differentiate content, process, products, or the learning environment. And so technology, of course, can help out with that kind of thing. And so our first one here is if we use Chromebooks, there's a lot of accessibility tools built right in. So I have a Chromebook next to me here. I'm on my regular computer, but I'm going to go here and I'm going to attempt this. I'm gonna try to make it so I can share my screen with my other account here. I'll make that a host real quick. And we should still be able to look at everything here. All right. And we'll go into yes. And we'll go into desktop and share. All right, so now, hopefully this works out. This is my first time doing this from two separate computers, so we're gonna see how this works. So as this other computer I'm on here is a Chromebook here, and what I'm trying to do is we're gonna try to look at our different differentiation tools that are built in here. Let me see if, are you guys able to see the screen here, or is it just blank? Abby can see it, okay.
Yeah, we can see the Google.
See the Google homepage there?
I can see it too.
Okay, perfect. Making sure. All right, let me, I'll put in the bit.ly again. Webinar 415. And we'll jump ahead a little bit here. All right, so setting up accessibility tools here on slide number 8 in the slideshow here, there's a link for you guys. For turning on accessibility features, this basically just takes you through the step-by-step for how to do it. Essentially what you'll do is we'll come down to the bottom right of our screen here, and it may or may not show up as one of the buttons here. Like you'll have your Wi-Fi button, you'll have like a Bluetooth button or notifications button, this night light things. What you can do though is, if we follow the directions here, we can go into settings and then advanced. So we're going to our little settings gear, and we will find advanced, go all the way down at the bottom. And now we open up accessibility way over here on the bottom left, and we can show accessibility options in the system menu. All right, and now we should have our little accessibility guy here. And now we have all of these different things here that are built into our Chromebook here. So we have Chrome Vox, select to speak, dictation, high contrast mode, full screen magnifier, docked magnifier, automatic clicks on screen keyboard, and even more stuff. All right, so there's a bunch of stuff here that's kind of built in. So let's take a look at what those things actually are. So again, there's the directions for you guys for how to turn on those accessibility tools. So here's what these do. So the first one, Chrome Vox, this is feedback on basically what's happening on the screen. Select to speak, that's pretty much what it sounds like, is it's going to highlight what was read on the screen. Dictation is you can speak to type. High contrast mode makes things easier to read, so it's not all like either a really light, bright background or really dark background. Magnify your full screen. You can also have a little floating magnify screen. And you can also do automatic clicks where you just, if you hover over hover over something that's clickable, I believe it's for like 1 full second or 2 full seconds, it'll do an automatic click for you. You just have to stay hovered over it and it'll automatically click for you. And then there's an on-screen keyboard, of course. The other ones are, again, fairly self-explanatory in that list as well. The highlight text caret, what that one does, that means you're going to highlight where you're typing. It's kind of a bigger notification for where you're typing. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a quick peek here at what those things look like. So if you have the accessibility menu on, pretty much what you're able to do is just click and click onto whichever one that you want to have. So if I want to do the docked magnifier here. So you'll see wherever my mouse goes on the bottom half of the screen is going to be really, really zoomed in on the top part of the screen. So it makes it a lot easier to see things. So, if I go into, I don't know, if I go into this web store, makes it a lot easier to see all this kind of smaller stuff for students. So that's very nice to have. If you want to flip these things on or off, as long as it has the little green check mark right there next to it, it's going to show up. If you want to turn it right back off, you just click that button again and it'll pop right back off. Okay. Other things that's kind of worth checking out here is the automatic clicks. I always like this one to show. Notice we have a little circle that kind of pops up once I stop moving the mouse. So if I want to go into that theme section, I'll hover over it and then just let go, and it's going to click right into it. Okay. I'm not actually having to click down onto the mouse to be able to do that. All I have to do is hover over something and it's going to click into that section for me. Really good for students that have trouble clicking or have like fine motor skills issues. Makes it a lot easier to do that kind of thing. Okay, and we have a little menu down here at the bottom that kind of chooses if you're going to do a left click or a right click. If it makes it do a double click, if it does a click and drag, if it does a scroll. So if students are having trouble scrolling up or down the pages, that makes it a lot easier to do that than it is to try to click and drag the bar on the side and drag it down, or do the little 2-finger drag. Right. So, oops. So we'll go back in here and we'll turn that back off. And if we'll go into our accessibility feature here again, then we'll go into dictation. Dictation sends your voice to Google to allow typing in any field. Okay. So if we come in here and say, let's see if it works here. let's go, and let's actually just do a Google Doc here. Okay, move this out of the way here. Come on. There we go. Okay, so if we have our text to speech on, there we go, we will see our little microphone that comes up in the bottom right. And so we'll make sure our cursor is started under some sort of field that we're able to actually type, so like in a Google Doc or something. And now we can start typing and telling our story. I'm not touching anything, period. Next line. Next line. Exclamation point. Oh, I guess it stops after a few seconds. And then we can continue on. So all we have to do is type whatever, or say whatever we want, period. And then continue on. Aha, so I just discovered something. If you say the word period, it turns it off. It turns off it turns off the typing, the voice typing. All right. So it's kind of a cool thing to have there, especially for students that can't type very well. Okay. Some things are going to will have to also be activated after you turn them on in this little side screen here. Some things won't necessarily. Here's a full screen magnifier. That one's obviously going to just magnify your whole screen like crazy. And basically wherever your mouse goes, it'll zoom over to that part of the page. So again, very helpful for students who have a tough time seeing. Okay. And then finally, we'll take a quick look at select to speak. You'll also notice that this is one of the ones that makes a little button come up in the bottom right. So if I turn on select to speak here, notice the little symbol changes there, and then highlight whatever we want.
I'm not touching anything, and then we can continue on. So we have to do is type whatever or say it would say whatever we want.
Okay, and of course that was just a bunch of gibberish that I was saying, but that can pretty much read what's happening on your page. Okay, there. If you're really interested, you can customize that even further. You can control the speed at which it reads. You can change the voice that it reads in. You can change kind of like the pitch and all that kind of stuff too. Somebody asked, can this also work for websites? It sure can. So if we go over to another website here, and we want to have it read like on a page here, so I'll just go into a little article here.
In Chicago, nearly 60.
There we go. And we'll find a kind of a bit of text here. Click on that, and that will highlight what we want read. And now it's reading through. Okay. And here I'll bump that up.
Weather.com meteorologist Chris Dolce.
Okay. Now on this case, I have a video playing too. That's annoying. Hey. There we go. All right. So that still works on web pages too. So if it's like an article that you found or something that you want students to be able to read, that's a handy little built-in tool that's built right into your Chromebook to check out. All right. All right, so back over here again. So again, there's a lot, of course, to do in with those accessibility tools that are built right into your Chromebooks there. Basically, even if you have a Chromebook that's a couple years old, these tools have been around for a while, so they'll probably still be there, even if you have a Chromebook that's a little bit old. These should still show up for you. Okay, let me come in here. I'm gonna switch back to my other account here so I can share my other screen here with you guys. Back over to the real me. Yes. All right. I am the host now. I am the captain now. Look at me. Captain Phillips joke. Okay, that was really dumb. Okay, anyway, so we'll go into that. Okay. So let's go ahead and go into now. We'll jump forward and there we go. We'll take a look at how we can differentiate in Google Classroom now. So one of the biggest things that we can do, that's probably the most useful for differentiation purposes here, is we can create separate assignments for different students in the same classroom. And the nice thing about that is we can make it so students aren't even going to really necessarily know that they have a different assignment than other students. So what we can do is we can easily give students a different assignment. And so, for example, here, if we have a student that has an IEP that requires like simplified text or extended directions or less questions or something like that, you can create a version for your general students and then a modified version for your students with an IEP. So let's just do real quick. We'll just create. Let's just create like two Google Docs, one that's like for your general students and then like a modified version. So let's do that real quick. So this will be super easy, super quick here. There's gonna be uh, a lot of blah blah blahs happening in your future. You'll see what I mean in a second. All right, so here we go. So I'll come in here, call it worksheet. Let's say 415, and this is going to be the Gen Ed version. All right, and then so we have question 1, question 3, 4, and question 5. Okay, something like that. So there's our Gen Ed version. And I'll come in and make a copy here. And of course, you'll just want to have some sort of identifier for yourself so you know which assignment is meant for which students. So then I made a copy here. And this is the IEP version. And maybe they will have 2 last questions. And, they have help text, blah, blah, blah. That's very helpful help text if you ask me. Okay, so now we have 2 different versions, super quick way. Of course, I'm sure you guys' work is a lot more robust than that, but so there's our 2 versions. So what we'll do is we'll go over into our Google Classrooms here. And we'll go into our classroom. Let's go into that one. So here's my history class here. And let's go into create an assignment. Now we do have to create them separately. So let's say at first we'll just we'll post the Gen Ed version and then we'll post the IEP version. All right, we can even call the titles the exact same things. That's the other thing we can do too. So we can still call this one worksheet 415. Go into add from Google Drive. And this one's supposed to be the Gen Ed version. So there's my Gen Ed version. Over on the right-hand side, instead of choosing multiple classrooms, we can choose this all students dropdown. Now here's kind of a little caveat with that. If you want to post this to multiple classrooms, notice what happens here. This one gets grayed out. So unfortunately, if you need to post the same assignment to multiple classrooms and you need to differentiate it, unfortunately, you really can't. You just still have to make it multiple times, unfortunately. We'll go through how to do that in just a second because you can do a reuse post, which will save you a little bit of time. So we'll unmark those. And under the all students drop down here, we can choose which students are going to receive this version. So in this case, this is the Gen Ed version. So let's just say Andrew's Gen Ed and Betty is Gen Ed. Chris and Debbie have IEPs, just as an example here. All right, so it's going to go to those two students. We'll put it under homework, 10 points. Sure, that's good. Do your due dates and your topics, and if you want to do a rubric, all that fun stuff. And we assign it. And now that's posted. Now we do the exact same thing, create another assignment here. This time, we can even name it the exact same thing, so students wouldn't even necessarily know the difference. Worksheet 415, go into add. But this time, the attachment's not going to be the Gen Ed version, it'll be the IEP version. All right, set it to make a copy for each student. I think I forgot to do that the first time, but it's always good to have it make a copy for your students there. And this time, it's for Chris and Debbie. All right, and I'll put it under homework category and go ahead and assign that out. All right, so for the student's perspective here, I'll go into Andrew. Andrew was one of the Gen Eds. If he comes in and looks at his assignment here, he has so many classrooms. He'll come in here, classwork, he comes in and he'll see the name of the assignment, 415. Again, you'll see the file. So for our purposes, I wrote Gen Ed on here. For your purposes, you may not want to do that, just so students aren't noticing the difference if they, if that's an issue. And then he comes in and views the assignment. And now, if we have, I'll open up another one. I think we had, I believe, Chris. Chris was one of the IEP ones, so he'll come into his classroom. There's that worksheet. And for all intents and purposes, basically, it looks essentially the same. Here's Andrew's on the left-hand side. That is, he's Gen Ed. Here's Chris's on the right-hand side, who has an IEP. They're not going to really know the difference besides what they see on their worksheets. So there, with Chris, who has the IEP, he has that modified version. On the left-hand side, Andrew, who's Gen Ed, he has just the Gen Ed regular version. Okay, so that's how a fairly easy way that we can differentiate right inside of Google Classroom. Now that is one way. Here, there's all your directions for you guys. There's a couple of screenshots in there, a little step-by-step for you. Now, if you want to create some student choice, this is another thing that that can kind of go into that idea of differentiation here. So differentiation can also help everybody, not necessarily just students with special needs, of course. So all students have a choice in how they can go about learning. And student choice boards are a fun way to really let students choose their own path and really hit the same, hit the same content points, but it allows them to kind of learn at their own speed or kind of in their own way. Has anybody used choice boards in class before?
No.
New to some people? All right. So here on slide number 17 here, there is a couple of different links here for you guys for different versions of choice boards here. On the left-hand side here is one from Casey Bell from Shake Up Learning. First of all, if you guys haven't been on that website, shakeuplearning.com, she has an incredible amount of good stuff on there. And this is just one of the things that she's come up with here. And she's like a tic-tac-toe method of choice boards here. And basically what she does is she has 8 different tasks that students can do. And all they have to do is make tic-tac-toe. They start out with they have to do number 5. but then they can go in any direction to make tic-tac-toe. So if they want to go, straight up and down, they would do 2, 5, and 8. If they wanted to go across, they do 1, 5, and 8. If they want to go, this direction, they could do 3, 5, and 7. Whatever. It's pretty much their choice to do. And there's templates for this to check out that you guys can just make these things from. They're very easy to make. The trickiest part is thinking of eight different possible activities for students to do. But when the content is the same, the different activities or different things or products that they can make can really just be different tech tools that they're using. If we kind of peek over to the one over here, this little menu looking thing here, this one is set up in a different way, but it's really cool. This one, I don't remember who created this one. Whoever Spall is, I stole this from somewhere. It's very cool though. So this one, she basically has students create like a meal. So we have entrees, and they choose one of these types of activities. There's a side. She has to do one of those. Appetizers, you do one of those. You essentially do one of each type of category here, and it's really, really cool. There's a link here at the bottom of slide 17 here for you. And this one goes over to the Shake Up Learning um, website here that has a bunch of different interactive learning menus. Oh, it was from Casey Bell as well. So I steal from her a lot. And so on this page here, there's a ton of different ways to talk about choice boards, and the choice boards that come in lots of different shapes and sizes here. So some of the things that are like this one that are kind of straightforward tic-tac-toe, that you just pick 3. Then there's a little more complicated kind of like menu ones that we just looked at, and there's different bingo activities that you can do too. This one's specifically geared towards like teacher PD, but it can easily be used for students as well. And the big thing to know how to do, like if we look at all of these things, the big thing to know how to do is just to know how to make either a table in a Google Doc here, create some hyperlinks, insert some pictures, change some colors, or if you do the more complicated one like this, if you do the more complicated ones like these, uh, they'll you just have to know how to make these shapes and put in these little pictures and hyperlinks. If you have those basic skills, you can do that. This particular menu here, I believe she created it in Google Drawings. So if you're familiar with that, again, it's relatively easy to use. You just have to put the time into creating it. All right, and the whole point is the content can basically stay the same. It's just changing the delivery method or the assessment method that students are using. All right, so student choice, of course, when you have a choice board created, you can post that right into your Google Classroom. And the choice board itself can link over to a bunch of other stuff. So kind of like, again, like we saw in those pictures, you can have hyperlinks set in those choice boards that have them link over to, it has them go and fill out a quiz, or if it has them go watch a video, if it has them do like a website, whatever it is. All right. Another thing you can do in Google Classroom as well is you can pick specific students for an assignment in order to create groups. Now, this is the same skills that we just went over a little bit ago, basically just picking different students to receive different assignments. But instead of doing it for the purposes of uh, accommodating for like an IEP, instead you do it for the purposes of groups. So we can still do like this is especially good if we're talking about remote learning here, and you still want students to be in groups doing work. We take those same skills that we did before. So if we create an assignment here, and instead of changing picking certain students or not based on if they have an IEP, it's based on what groups that you're putting them into to do some work, and then those different groups get a different activity. So think of doing maybe like a jigsaw activity. Traditionally in class, if you've done like a jigsaw activity, you just have different students break off into different groups. They go into different sections of the room, and they do their part of the jigsaw activity, right? Instead, this way, if we're doing this, especially good for doing this remotely, or just managing it through Google Classroom here, you make your groups ahead of time, and then those students in Google Classroom for each group will receive that worksheet. that goes to their part of the jigsaw. Okay, and that could work for like a jigsaw activity. That could go for like doing, if you're doing some heavier like project-based learning or traditional group work too. All right. Another thing you can do as well is you can also assign instructions or roles in the instructions box. So you can have something that looks like this, where you have, this that says like, the title would be, Team 1 project or Team A project. In the instructions box in Google Classroom here, you could have your different roles. So, here's Andrew, he's the team leader. Betty, she's the note taker. Debbie, she's the presenter. And then those students are going to, those specific students are going to receive um, that activity. All right. And again, that's just a nice way of splitting things up between different students, and kind of fostering a little bit of collaboration from Google Classroom here, which of course can help out a lot of students. So if one of the students is on your lower side, lower achiever, then we can still kind of pair them up with the higher achiever kids and still kind of be doing the whole purpose of doing group work, right? And again, this is something that can still totally work, doing all this remote learning. All right, we also have rubrics in Google Classroom. If you haven't noticed, rubrics have been finished and been submitted into your guys' Google Classrooms. This is something that was in beta for a little while, but it's all finished and ready now. And you're able to create rubrics right inside of your Google Classroom, and you're even able to save rubrics and use them over and over again. So if you haven't spotted them before, when you're creating an assignment, you have the ability to, over here on the right hand side, we can come in and create a rubric. Let me give this a name here. All right, and we can go ahead and give it I'll just give it another Google Doc here. And once we have a file in here, we can come over to the rubric button and we can create a rubric. All right, and again, you can also pair your rubrics with this differentiation piece that we were doing earlier. So again, if you want to have a different rubric for kids that are on an IEP, you can have, if this is the IEP version, you can have the kids that have an IEP, they get a separate rubric than the kids that are doing the general version. Okay, so if you haven't, I'll go real quick through this, but if you haven't checked out the rubrics here in Google Classroom, they're super handy, honestly. So you can choose which direction the criteria is going to go, either ascending or descending. Go into your criteria, then just fill it out. So if I do grammar, spelling, put in your point value. Needs improvement. 2 points. Okay. 3 points is good. And 4 points. Excellent. Whatever it is. Okay. And then you can add more criteria if you'd like. Oh, my Zoom window's in the way. Add criterion, and then I can add a whole nother criteria with all those lists. Okay. And then so I can save that. Oh, I have an extra one. And I can save that. And again, the nice thing about this is you can reuse these rubrics over and over again. So as long as if you create it once here, and you keep them general enough, you can just reuse them over and over again for future assignments. So if it's things like for spelling and grammar and length and common mistakes and accuracy or things like that, when you go in to grade these things, again, you can kind of pull these things in together. Okay. So that's another thing in Google Classroom there that they added in for us just a couple of months ago. This is a fairly recent thing. All right, and we'll go into maximizing Google Docs and slides here. So just like in the Chromebooks, there's a few tools that are built in here for us that are good for accessibility features. So in Google Docs, we can do voice typing. So even if we're not on a Chromebook, so like right now I'm on my regular PC, we can do voice typing for students who can't type well. So if you're not in a one-to-one Chromebook school, we can still do voice typing, very similar to how we did it a little bit ago on the Chromebook. Let me go into a brand new Google Doc here. And we'll come down here. And under the Tools button, we will go into voice typing. And then we'll click on that little button. George Washington was the first president of the United States, period. He was also a major general in the American Revolutionary War. There we go. And so just like that, we can have some voice typing built in here. This is not an add-on. This is something that's just natively in Google Docs. So again, that's just under Tools and then voice typing. And then of course you can just type right in. All right. And that's nice if you're not on especially if you're not on a Chromebook. You can also translate the entire document, which is a very cool thing as well. And you can add voice comments for personalized feedback. So there's our directions for our voice typing here. And another kind of fun use for that is you can have this just turn on while you're just talking. It'll basically do a transcript of the lesson for you. Again, it's going to work better in person. Over Zoom, it might, or I haven't tested that. It might not work super great, but that's something you can kind of play around with. Now, what you can also do is translate the entire document. So if I have there we go. If I have this document, this couple of sentences here, and I need to translate it over to a different language, I come up to Tools, and I'll find the Translate document. We can put in a new title if we'd like. Then we can choose which language it's going to translate over to. So if if you have parents that only speak Spanish, we can come down and find Spanish. There we go. And translate. It'll create a copy of the original. And there we are. So then just like that, we have a translated document. And that's just handy because you don't have to go outside to like Google Translate and go and do all this copying and pasting and everything. You could just translate that whole document just like that. All right. Some voice comments. Now, this is not something that's an add-on. So this is something a little bit extra that you can do. There is an add-on called Kaizena for Google Docs that allows you to add voice comments. The way to get it is if we come up to the add-ons menu and go to Get Add-ons. This loads for me here. Yeah, man. There we go. Then we do a search for Kaizena. There we go. And here it is. And you can install it. Now, depending on your school, you may or may not have the ability to install things, install add-ons rather. So just kind of check with your school. Some schools allow teachers to install add-ons, some don't. If it's something that you're really interested in, you can talk to your tech director and they'll allow you to get that installed. But this is what it looks like real quick. We open up Kaizena here. It's gonna open up this little sidebar for me. And basically what we do is we'll leave a little comment bubble. And once we highlight something, we can leave a voice message. Too many things, go away. And now it's recording, and this little voice message is gonna pop up and be attached to whatever I've highlighted over on the left-hand side. Stop and post. And now, even if I close out of it, when I have, I'm sorry, it does have to stay open rather. When I have Kaizen open rather, it's going to have that little sidebar, and whatever is highlighted and has a audio attachment to it, I have that little a little 11-second clip of me talking there. All right, so you can leave a little bit of voice feedback. Now, here's a little caveat to that, though. Both the teacher and the student have to have that Kaizena add-on installed. Okay, so if it's something that you like, you check out a little bit more, and something that you're really interested in, talk to your tech director again, and they'll be able to have that installed for you and your students. Okay, so in this case, though, students and teachers both have to have that installed. Okay. Now, if that's not really a possibility for you guys of getting that add-on installed, there's another thing that you can do to kind of achieve the same thing. Real quick, this, I don't think I put this on. I did not. If you like this idea of Kaizena, of leaving like voice or video feedback for your students, another way to do that is when you are grading things from uh, Google Classroom. What you can do is record yourself giving some feedback with Screencastify. So if we are, in here, and where's my, there it is, and I leave a Screencastify video of myself giving feedback to students, Screencastify lets you just post a link. Then you can take that link and post it as a comment in the Google Classroom feedback. Okay, so that it's kind of achieves basically the same idea without having to have students install anything extra. Okay, that's not in the slideshow. I neglected to put that in there, but it's kind of the same idea there. So if you're using Kaizena, here's a couple of more tips there for you for how you can use it. Okay, quickly here. There is a few more things that you can do over in Google Slides. One of the most useful things is you can do closed captioning. So this one of those things that kind of slides under the radar. And let me just go into a new Google slideshow real quick. And when you're in present mode, just like normal, what we'll have is we'll have this little closed caption button. And this is another one of the things that will transcribe what you're saying as you're saying it. So this is basically a way for you to have some closed captioning for your students in your notes lectures here. This is one of those things that's just has been sitting in Google Slides for a long time, and people just always just kind of forget about it. The cool thing is that they recently added was the ability to change where the text is going to show up, so you can have it be at the top or the bottom. And you can also change how big or small it is. So if I want it to be nice and big, it can show up just like that. And then you can start going through your lectures and stuff as normal. And this is something that you really don't have to do any setup for. This is something that will just continue to show up for you guys as you're going. So if you're in a Zoom lesson with your students and you have your Google slideshow pulled up, just turn on closed captioning and students will be able to also read what you're saying. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Can you tell I was watching Curb Your Enthusiasm? Okay. Anyway, so we are coming towards the end here, so I'll kind of go a little quick here. Immersive reader, without going too deep into this here, since we're kind of running low on time, this is another feature that does text to speech. All right, so you can have it read to you. Now, there's a couple of different ways to do this here. Now, if you're a OneNote user, or if you've never used OneNote before, this is where Immersive Reader originated here. And basically what it does is you're able to have it read to you what's on screen. Let's see, somebody had a question. For Kaizena, are there settings for restrictions for students? I may not want a student to go crazy with making recorded comments in a document that they're sharing with other students. Hopefully that makes sense. That's a good question. I think you are limited in the free version of Kaizena to a certain amount of storage or a certain number of recordings. So you're limited in that way. But other than that, not really. In terms of communicating with each other, Kaizena is a pretty terrible way for students to communicate with each other. If they need to tool to talk with each other. Kaizen is not going to be the one that they choose. It's way too clunky. Good question, though. Okay, so OneNote will let you do immersive reader, among other things. If you want to check it out, this link here on slide 32 here will go through the directions for you for how to do that. All right, there's all the directions for you. Just kind of run low on time here, so I don't want to keep you guys too late with all the step-by-step here. But here's all the step-by-step stuff for you guys if you're so interested. Now, in the new Microsoft Edge browser, it has Immersive Reader built into the browser. And it's very nice because you can basically take a web page and it will turn it in to an Immersive Reader document. So when you're on a page like that, it'll flip it. You can basically just click the button, choose how the Immersive Reader looks, and you can change the text size and all that fun stuff. And then it'll start reading to you. And again, you can change the speed of the speed of the voice. You can choose the voice pitch. You can have it highlight like different parts of speech and things like that. And that one, again, that feature is built right into the new Microsoft Edge browser. So if you're so interested in it, here's what the Microsoft Edge browser looks like. It's based on Google Chrome now. They updated it recently, so it's very much similar to Google Chrome. So it's something worth checking out if you're so interested. Now, there also is a immersive reader extension in the Chrome Web Store that you can also use. So if you are a dedicated Chrome user, kind of like me, I have the other browser, but I just use basically Chrome for everything. There is a extension that lets you do the same thing here. So if, we come over and do, weather.com. Let's see if this even works for me. I'm not even sure, honestly. This might just be a bad example to use, but we'll see. And we can, there we go. And if we find the add-on, there it is. This is now what the immersive reader looks like. And again, it will read the page. Okay, and like the website I chose was just basically just a bad example, but let's see if it'll take that little bit here. Highlight the text that we want, and then click on the extension, and then it'll read it to you. This web page that I chose was just a bad example, but that is there for you guys to kind of play around with. Again, for students' purposes, they would have to get this extension installed. Okay, and then our last couple of minutes here, I'll just mention this super quick. There's also a web app called Noisely. This is just a nice thing for getting students focused. This website just boosts concentration and focus with some background noise. You're able to get like sounds of like wind blowing and trees rustling and like kind of just like ambient noise. So it's either good for distracting from whatever noises are going on in their house, or if their house is dead quiet, it gives them a little bit of that background noise. Okay, so that was a quick little look at different accessibility and differentiation tools for you guys. So we looked at Chromebook accessibility tools. We took a peek at using Google Classroom for different forms of differentiation. And we also looked at Google Drive, Google Docs and Slides for a few more functions that allow for more differentiation. And we took a quick look, kind of glance over at Immersive Reader and Noisely. All right, so that's pretty much going to bring us right down to the end. If you have any other questions, feel free to hang out and ask any other questions that you have. I'm going to post, I just realized I forgot to post the link to the survey in CEU, so that's my fault. But I'll email out the links to the CEU's certificates of attendance here for you guys in just a little bit. As long as you guys signed up on the on that Google form for today's session, you'll get that certificate for today. All right. If you have any other questions, feel free to hang out and ask away.